On this episode of Getting Woke with Dr. Chi, I talk with my friend Jeanie Chang, who's a licensed therapist and who incorporates Korean dramas into her therapy sessions. We've met on Clubhouse and have met in person, and Jeanie is the host of the Noona's Noonchi podcast, in which she talks to people about their experiences with Kdramas. Listen to how she low-key describes interviewing a celebrity. I thought it was hilarious. I was like, wait, what? What did you say? But also, she's so kind and gracious as I show her an illustration of my trying to write my name Chinyere in Hangul. So, you know, she's really sweet and kind for being patient with me in my pride at my first attempt. I hope that you'll enjoy this episode, in which we talk about everything from switching careers and while saving face in your community, particularly in her Asian American community, thinking about like how you realize your calling and how you transition into that, but also having good backups. But also what happens when you go get your degree and you're like, this is not working for me, right? So being open to the possibilities while also being true to yourself, I think, is a really good theme. So this is the first part of my interview with Jeanie. So the next part will come out in the upcoming weeks. And so I hope you enjoy it. Jeanie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dr. Chi?
I'm doing well. It's so good to see you today. So this might be a little different for you because I'm sure that you're used to asking people questions and
But I love this. I love it.
Yes. So just to let you know, I tried to write my name in Korean, and out of inspiration, but of the Kdramas, and I don't know how well it came out, but it's the first attempt. I don't know if you could see it.
Oh,
first attempt.
Chinyere.
Chinyere.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Chinyere.
I have to work on my penmanship.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
Yeah. Good first attempt.
Very good. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, one day I'm gonna learn Hangul. But anyway, so I wanted first of all for you to tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? Who is Jeanie Chang?
Wow.
Or
Okay.
is it Chang? Am I saying your name correctly? Is it Chang?
Of course.
Okay.
It's Chang.
Okay, Chang.
The American way is Chang. The Korean way is Chang.
Chang. Okay.
But it sounds weird. Jeanie Chan. No, just say Jeanie.
Jeanie Chan.
But no, so my maiden name was Bae. That was my maiden name. Okay. I prefer my maiden name because it's more of a specific Korean last name, where Chang is a Korean last name, but it's also Chinese. So anyways, but no, I grew up in a suburb of Wilmington, Delaware. So outside of Philadelphia, that's our big city, in a very white neighborhood. So I was the token Asian a lot of the time. Now there were other Asians as well, but Koreans, very hard to find where I grew up. So that's part of that, my narrative of wanting to be, really standing out for being Korean, right? And we were the one Korean on our street, in our neighborhood, in our area. And I just remember, and that's probably where some of that struggle began when you're a kid, you don't want to stand out. As an adult, we want to stand out. It's
right.
I'm all about, hey, look at me. But when you're little, you're like, oh, my hair is, obviously it's curly right now, but it's straight. It's so fine. Everybody has curly blonde, I was all jealous of everyone's hair. So I just remember a lot of that, always feeling like I wish I was American. Mm-hmm. Ironically enough, I am American. So I would probably rephrase that and say, I wish I was white. That's pretty much what I would say now, but I thought it was American, but I am American. So that was a lot of my upbringing. And then it wasn't until college when I was exposed to my first K-drama that was, and it was 1990. I still remember this. So I'm dating myself, but 1992, that's actually when I graduated from high school. 1992 was the first K-drama that I watched. It's called Jealousy. In Korean, it's Chultu. You probably heard me talk about it, but it's so good. It's like a classic love triangle, rom-com. But back then, the K-dramas were the ones that we watch today are still deep and still gut-wrenching at times. But back then, it was a little bit more so. I think they showed a little bit more of the hardship because you're talking, 90s. So the technology is not as advanced. So it was very like heart-wrenching, the emotions, and then the girl's story and her being poor, right? You have the chebol. It was my first exposure to, honestly, Korean culture in a positive way for me as an 18-year-old, that I went, oh, okay, they're making it look cool. Like I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, she's really pretty. Oh, he's really handsome. Where I didn't see that growing up. Again, I stood out, and nobody wants to stand out. So that was the beginning of the end. No, that was the beginning of my K-drama journey and how much it meant to me. That's why K-dramas mean so much to me. It's not just a diversion. It's not fun. It's not just fun. Of course it's fun, but it really helped me embrace my Korean identity. And then college was a big discovery too. I always share this with people, but in college, I found out I was not Korean enough, right? So growing up, I wasn't white enough or American. And then Asian, and then I go to NYU where it's full of Asians, full of Koreans. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, you're Korean? Yeah, you don't speak Korean. And I was like, well, I kind of, but really not very well, because I didn't speak it growing up. And so I felt very othered, even in the Korean community. So that's why I'm such an advocate now in what I do in mental health as a clinician, where I tell folks, college is that time where you're exploring. And during that time, I decided, you know what, you're right. I am not Korean in the way you define it. I am not maybe American enough in the way people define it, but I'm going to figure out my own identity. So yeah, that's a lot of my work today. So fast forward some 20, some 30 years. And I am a mental health professional, and I have my own private practice. I'm in the state of North Carolina, and I love working with, I would say, a range of folks from, I would say 18, maybe 19 years old, all the way up to late 50s. And the thing that I see the most is the struggle of identity. And now most of my clients, almost all, are Asian Americans, but before it wasn't, but it was still all about what brought them into therapy, like the struggles they had, who they were. So that's a little bit about me, and K-dramas is how you and I met.
Yes.
That's a big part of my work.
Wow, that's so fascinating, Jeanie. Like it's really striking, because so much of what you said really resonated with me, in the sense, like, I grew up in Chicago, and I'm Black, obviously, and there is this narrative of Blackness that exists, but like my family was not like the African American or Black American type of Black. And I didn't have the luxury of growing up with Nollywood films, so the only Nigeria I got was if I went back home to Nigeria to visit, which only happened like a couple of times when I was a kid. And so growing up, it was kind of like, you're not Nigerian enough for my Nigerian uncles and aunties and cousins. But then for like Americans, especially for Black Americans, I wasn't American enough, specifically Black American enough. But like, we grew up in what I call the Christy Brinkley years. And like, she was the standard of beauty. Like, it was a
and Cindy Crawford. Remember Cindy Crawford too? I think
like, she Cindy Crawford in the 90s, yes. But like, that was beautiful. And then everybody else was like, oh, okay, they're exceptions to the rule. But there wasn't this expansive notion of like who an American is or what beauty looks like. And I think that that's changed a lot, because now it's like, yeah, we're American, I'm American, we're American, right? We can all be American today. But back then, when we were growing up, is like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think you're a child of immigrants, but like for me, my parents were both born abroad. So for me, it was like, I'm American, but I'm not American,
Yeah, and that's hard. No, yes, my parents immigrated in 1974 when I was a baby, actually. So I actually was born in Seoul, South Korea, but I came when I was a baby. So pretty much raised here, but still, that's my birthplace. I'm proud to say that. But no, there are immigrants, and I can't imagine their experience. But yes, that was a lot of that experience. Like when I remember growing up and them having to master the English language, and now I say it, they have mastered the English language. But that must have been extremely difficult, right? And then I remember being made fun of a little bit, right?
Me just looking at Korean, I'm just like, I only realized like maybe 2 years ago, like that, okay, that's Korean, like, I know that's Korean versus like that's Chinese or Thai or something, right? Yeah. And so like, I couldn't imagine like having to learn another alphabet and like having to speak in another language. Like Like my parents, they're from Nigeria, so like thanks to the British colonizers who like have robbed resources from us for centuries, they speak English, right? So that
Right.
was as much of a difficulty for them, although they have huge accents that they still get trouble for sometimes. But
Yeah.
like I can imagine like having to learn a new alphabet, a new language, and speak it with proficiency so you can make your way in this new land that you've called home. Like
I know. Watching the K-dramas have helped me also relearn my language. Korean was my first language, right? Because I was a little baby. So of course at home, my parents spoke to me in Korean. That was their first language. Yeah. And actually, this is what's sad, but my mom told me later as an adult, as a young adult, she said, just FYI, when you were like up to 7 or 8 years old, which is like first, second grade, she goes, you spoke English and Korean beautifully, like perfectly, both. I was going interchangeable. But then she goes, one day you just came home and said, I'm not speaking Korean anymore. I don't remember saying that, but I do remember, of course, always speaking English. So she goes, no, you refused to speak Korean, and then we didn't push you because we wanted you to fit in. You know, the very typical immigrant story of going, yeah, we want you to learn English. You're right. But then there's other parents that really enforced their language of origin. But my parents really wanted us in a very white neighborhood for Jeanie to fit in. And so they did not push it. They actually spoke lots of English at home and helped them. But I regret that. So when I see the K-dramas, because your brain works in those ways, it does infiltrate pretty well. And even when I see the subtitles, I need the subtitles. I will directly hear the Korean and go, oh, the subtitle's inaccurate, because some of the subtitles are inaccurate. So I'll know it. I'm like, oh, that's not the right, huh?
But I mean, it's not something you could choose as a child, right? Like we don't make those decisions. I actually heard you were talking about this in I think your latest podcast episode. We were talking about this process of like letting go of Korean as a child to fit in, but then now like feeling like you want to like get into it again, and it's beautiful. I feel like for me, I would love to learn Igbo, which is the language of my parents, but like, it's complicated because of the colonization aspect, where like a lot of the media will be in English and people will speak a little bit of Igbo, and then they'll go back into English. You know, it's hard. It's rare to find shows that are completely in Igbo and the ones that are completely translated. Because like I can't understand a lick of Igbo. Like
I can't imagine that. Must be a difficult language. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, life is hard. Wah, wah, wah. You do the best you can.
Well, you watch K-drama, so you see that they use English words sometimes.
Yes,
right? I crack up when I see them like say it in Korean, and I'm like, that is so funny. They say English words a Korean accent way, and I crack up going, that's so funny, but so cool. You know?
Yeah. And at first you said annoy me, but then I realized like they're making English their own, right? It is now a global language. And it reminds me of like when I remember I used to live in Spain, people would say things like es un crack or something like that, like saying somebody's really good at something. But the way that they said it was like, okay, you're saying the word crack? That doesn't have a good connotation.
Right, it doesn't. Yeah.
But so like I wanted to talk a little bit more about like like how you became a therapist, because you were talking about like your professional life as a therapist and how you're blessing so many people. It sounds like I'm sure there's tons of people who are like, I'm Asian, I want an Asian therapist. It's like, you know who you can call.
Yeah, and of course now in this day and age, it's I'm a little overwhelmed, right? Because it's more in demand. But no, I started off as a journalist. Broadcast journalist, yeah, specifically in radio. And I want to share that I was super excited about that. In fact, I still look at it fondly in the sense of it was my life goal. I wanted to be a top Asian American anchor, like known to everybody. Like I wanted to be on television eventually and be like, I'm Jeanie Chang, or actually Jeanie Bay at the time, right? And so, but this is where mental health comes in. You never know where life takes you. And it's not like some catastrophic event happened. It was just more like, as I was working at the Associated Press, I was covering downtown DC, Capitol Hill, President Clinton during that presidency, all exciting stuff. But then it didn't fit right. It was weird. It's like, I enjoyed when I was there at work because I was busy. By the way, broadcast journalism, it's a crazy life. You got a 24-hour news, right? It's very busy, reporting breaking news. And then coming home and feeling like, I think I'm identifying too much with work. I remember even thinking in my early 20s about mental health, but I didn't know that's what mental health was. I was more like, I don't feel good. I feel like in 10 years, I may not be happy. Like I was thinking this way, which made me, I think, a little bit more progressive and radical to do what I'm doing now. Cause I decided to leave the field at the height of my, at the literally as soon as I got promoted to entertainment reporter. And then I said, yeah, this is nice and all, interviewing Snoop Dogg, but that's not for me. And I quit. Yeah. And I was like, people, especially people who were jealous of my position at the time, they were like, what's wrong with Jeanie Bae? Like, who quits after moving up very quickly? I moved up very quickly. I was blessed in that way, but that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I didn't care about success if I didn't feel happy. I felt like I was working too hard. I was sleep deprived and then losing friends in the sense of I had no time for friends. So friends move on, right? If you don't spend time with them. And I'm a very outgoing person. Thank goodness my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, was there. But you still need friends. You need your community. So I decided to leave.
Wait a minute. So you were at the peak of your career, Jeanie, and you're like, I don't feel well. I'm not liking this life. So I'm going to do something different. That's like a huge step. I think a lot of people are going through the same thing, especially right now with the pandemic, you know, like reassessing their lives. Like, is this really what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
And so you decided to take the bold step of leaving your career. And like, I mean, did you know what you were going to step into? You're like stepping off the curb into what?
Right. No. So that's why I think that's what makes me do what I do well, in the sense of when I talk about workplace mental health now, when I'm a speaker. But I actually was like, I chose sounds cheesy, my happiness first. Yeah. I left as soon as I got promoted. And I'm going to be honest, the Associated Press pays well. So I was, and the journalism pays well. So you can make all this money. This is an example where I was like, I don't care about the money if I can't even enjoy it. What am I doing? I have no friends. I was like, I have a boyfriend. I need friendship. I need family. I need fun. So I left, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Like I was thinking, I'm a career dropout. I'm Asian. This is not what we're supposed to do. Right. So I decided to do the next best thing. I decided to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. What do I want to do? I mean, I left the field of journalism, went into public relations, a 9-to-5 job. And during that time, I was thinking, what do I want to do? I decided to go
so you didn't, when you stepped off the curb, you weren't like unemployed, Jeanie.
No, I was smart enough to go, let me find a job first. And I went into public relations, a really big firm in DC, very corporate, very business. But I knew I didn't want to do this for life. And I actually it's so funny. I was actually producing videos. So I was still in the media, but I decided I'm going to business school. And I did it for all the wrong reasons. I went, business school makes me look good. I'll go to Johns Hopkins, and that's a good name. And then you know what I mean? So it was all about still like saving face and showing face and living up to my Asian identity of success. Do you know what I'm saying? So I went for all the wrong reasons. And that's why I'm very passionate when I tell young folks, it's okay. You can make those choices, because now, I did not like business school. Hate is a strong word. I disliked it very much, but I finished it because I was proud of that. And I had kids in between and got married. I mean, all this stuff happened. It took me a long time to finish business school, but long story short, I'm using my business degree now, even after I went back to go. By the way, I had to go to grad school again for my license in mental health. But I know for a while I was like a forever student, but the whole point is I use my business degree now as a entrepreneur. I run my own practice. So all of this stuff is coming full circle. And then as a journalist, I was pretty eloquent. So as a speaker, it comes natural to do that. So I feel like it was meant to be, it was part of my journey. And that is why I'm doing what I am doing today, but it also enriched me as a clinician. Like I'm able to relate to corporate America professionals. I'm able to relate to, students that are floundering, going, what am I doing? What am I doing? So I think I was meant to do mental health. I followed my calling, by the way, in my early 30s to go back to graduate school again for marriage and family therapy. And then the rest is history.
Okay. So Jeanie, while you left your career in journalism and you're telling your parents who migrated to the US to start a better life and have hopes and dreams for their children that they will do better than them, how do they take all of that? My parents, they're like,
if I recall, to be honest, they were not unsupportive. Okay. They weren't thrilled. They weren't like, oh, cool. What are you going to do? No, they were more like, what? Why do you want to leave journalism? But don't forget, I said, oh, I'm going into PR. So I had like backup to backup to backup plans. And then when I was in PR, I go, oh, this is just temporary. I'm going to business school. So remember I shared, I did business school for the wrong reasons, to look good, to make my parents happy, to sound good to people. Oh yeah, I'm getting an MBA, you know, all this stuff. And then realized, and by the way, I ended up not getting an MBA. I transferred out of the MBA program at Johns Hopkins to get my master's. I don't care about finance, right? So I remember talking to my advisor and she was like, well, we have this new program where you could focus on marketing and specific communications in the business degree. So why don't you transfer to that? So the whole point was I enjoyed the business side of marketing and communications, which was fascinating. But then when I told him I was going back to grad school again, I was like, yeah, by the way, business is not working out. I don't like marketing. Because I worked in marketing for a little bit. And then I told him again, but this time around, because I was by then a full-fledged adult raising kids, they had really no say. I was going to say, listen, I'm going to go pursue marriage and family therapy. And they're like, what? My dad is a physician, retired physician. So he knew about the mental health field. So he was pretty okay with it in the sense of, oh, I see. I still don't know much about mental health, but I get where you're going. And it was my passion. I said, I really believe I'm meant to do this. Grad school though, the second time around, I don't recommend it with 4 kids.
Oh, wow.
That's what I did. Obviously, I loved what I was learning and learning about, I was learning about myself through therapy school. I was like, oh, wow. Ooh, I'm uncovering things I didn't know about myself. Like I learned about internalized racism in the midst of the graduate school program and realizing that's what I was experiencing. So it was really cool to learn about who you are through a mental health, graduate school program.
Right. And now you're able to help other people dealing with similar issues.
Yes.
Very cool. Thanks for getting woke with me today. I hope that you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please like and subscribe. Be sure to share this episode with your friends, your lovers, your enemies, your frenemies, and anybody else who you think might be interested. I hope that you have a wonderful week and take care.